In a world that's telling you to consume more or that you'd be happier if you get something new, we would give people an alternative, right? Don't buy a jacket. You don't need something new. Instead, think about what you have and what you can repair.
Welcome back to Social Media for Social Impact, the podcast where we explore how brands, creators, and changemakers are using digital platforms to create real change. I'm your host, Misha Couzet, and today we're diving into one of the world's most respected purpose-driven brands, Patagonia. I'm very excited about this episode and to have my special guest today, Felipe Guzman, social media lead at Patagonia. From buy this jacket to the president gave the company to the planet, Patagonia has continually shown that social media can be a force for education, activism, and connection, not just commerce. We'll talk about how Felipe and his team turn values into viral storytelling, what it takes to stay authentic in a digital age, and how Patagonia defines influence and impact in its own unique way. Felipe, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Nisha.
So, Patagonia's mission, we're in the business to save our home planet, is bold and emotional. Can you share how that mission guides your everyday decisions on social media?
Absolutely. What a big a mission to have, right? Whenever I think about our mission statement, it can feel daunting, and sometimes I can feel a little bit overwhelmed. But it's good to have such a big, bold mission statement as it centers us and guides us through all of our decision making. When I approach it from a social lens, I think about what kind of messaging are we putting out there, and is it really helping move the needle on this issue, or is it just more trash on the internet?
Fascinating. So, when you approach strategy, do you think of Patagonia primarily as a brand, a movement, or a community?
First and foremost, we're a business, right? Like we're in business to save our home planet. So I think I want to acknowledge that. And I think that brings upon a lot of challenges and also a lot of opportunities. We have the opportunity to show the world maybe how business can be done differently. So to answer your question, I do see Patagonia primarily as a brand. I do see it as a community, and hopefully it's resonating with people as a movement.
That's beautiful. We've talked a lot about how you've built those communities, and I feel like Patagonia has done such a good job of embodying all of these things. So, a brand that has a very loyal community, and we'll talk about that as well today. When you look at brands online, I'm sure you follow a lot of organizations and brands and take a look at their digital presence. A lot of brands claim authenticity in today's day and age, but we've seen that Patagonia earns trust. Can you talk about the internal practices or team norms that help you ensure that the social content is truly reflecting those values?
Yeah, this is something that we come to terms daily. If we go from the founding, Yvon Chouinard left a very strong blueprint on how to run business, and that translates to all parts of the business. When it comes to how it reflects on social, I think when Yvonne first started, social media did not exist, right? Or even like the website, patagonia.com did not exist. So when we think about staying true to our values of not causing unnecessary harm and also having integrity, thinking about things unconventionally, that's what comes to mind in terms of like how we reflect those values on social. We have multiple stakeholders throughout the business that help ensure and guide our content. And also, there's times where we fight it out, right? Like, we all have a vision on what should work on social or should be placed on social. And oftentimes, that's not aligned with the other things that we're doing in the business. So, we have to compromise in some areas, and in other areas, we have to push and be our own activists. The business is pretty much set up in that way where we're all advocating from our own respective fields to ensure that the mission statement gets across.
Absolutely. Do you have an example of a team norm or an internal practice that your social media team uses as you're having these conversations?
The number one question that I challenge, or at least we're challenged in the social media team, is why does this piece of content exist? We're going to put this content out there. What is its purpose? Does it serve a purpose, right? Whether is it to convert people into our community, or whether is it to be more lighthearted and provide some relief from all the chaos, or whether it is to drive action and move the needle on an issue. That's the question we always try to answer.
I love the fact that you, as a team, are always looking very intentionally at, okay, what is the goal of this piece of content? And ensuring that it is aligning with your purpose, essentially. And we'll definitely dive into that more because a lot of people who are listening to the podcast are folks that work in the social media space. They're often asked by leadership and other stakeholders to put out certain content. As a team, how do you decide when a topic aligns with Patagonia's purpose and perhaps when it's better for the brand to stay silent or amplify other voices instead?
Yeah, this is a really interesting question. I keep referring back to our mission statement. If it aligns with our mission to save our home planet, it's a easy kind of decision, right? Like we're gonna make a statement or make content about it. But oftentimes that work is done by groups on the ground. So if it's an issue that we've been closely following or supporting, we rather let that organization or the people who are on the ground have a voice. So at that point, we act as a microphone and we allow them to step in and give us their point of view. So that's how we decide when the brand makes a statement or when we allow others to just speak for their own work. There's no need for us to insert our voice on something that, quite frankly, is the work and expertise of another organization or person.
That's very profound. I love the literal and figure of speech, holding a microphone to highlight other voices. And that also shows that you're in this as a brand, as a collective to save the home planet. And a lot of organizations have been trying to emulate that and mimic that, but I've seen firsthand, hearing from you and seeing your work and the work that Patagonia has been doing, that you truly do amplify those other voices and make sure that all the content that goes out there aligns with your purpose. So that's fantastic. I'd love to get a little more specific on the creative strategy and campaigns. Can you take us behind the scene of any campaign at Patagonia that made you proud from the initial idea to its launch on social media?
Absolutely. I think one of the most recent, or actually probably not so recent, it was last year. Patagonia, since I've worked there, but even before that, has been heavily involved in politics. And last year, we launched a campaign to mobilize people to engage in politics and think of the planet as a primary issue in the campaign. So we ideated on a concept, and obviously, this is the work of many people. I don't want to discredit all the work and all the people involved. The simple campaign was, how do we get people to engage in politics from a lens of environmental activism or protecting our planet? So the slogan that was decided on was Vote Her. And Vote Her was a play on the earth, right? As gender, saying saying the earth is it's a female, so Vote Her kind of alludes to the earth. But we also had a candidate that was running for office that was a woman. So I think that the through line there was somewhat clear, right? It was up for interpretation, and whatever candidate had the most environmental friendly policies is who ultimately who we would want to be in office. But the goal of the campaign was to get voters to think about w- what platform that these candidates were presenting when it came to environmental issues. The reason why I think the campaign was so special is that it really resonated with our audience. We got tons of engagement across all of our social media channels, with one of my favorite assets being Leave Democracy Better Than You Found It. It went live on election day, received over 130,000 engagements, and it sparked a lot of conversation on social media. And hopefully, that was a catalyst for someone to go out there and cast their vote.
Incredible. I vividly remember the campaign, and you and I talked about the engagement online as well, which is fantastic to see. Again, a lot of folks may be listening and thinking, I want to do this for my organization and I want to be able to take a political stance and I want to make often bold, sometimes even controversial statements. How do you, as a brand, evaluate that balance between moral conviction, so to speak, and brand risk?
I wish I had a better answer for you, and I'll be honest with you, I could read off a script right now, but I really have to stick to our values. Like, we're if it's about saving the home planet, then it makes sense for us to make a statement. If it's about protecting the land and the people in which occupy those lands, and I think that's where our focus is on and where we feel comfortable making a statement. We often know that it might lead to some backlash, but if it's aligns with our values, then we feel good about whatever the outcome may be.
Thank you for sharing. Another thing that a lot of our audience members and even my clients and my students in class talk about is the Don't Buy This Jacket campaign. And it remains iconic. Give people this oxymoron impression of, if you're in the business of profit as well, why wouldn't you want people to buy more of your jackets? So you've been making a lot of impact online. I want to hear your perspective and what you believe made that message resonate so deeply with audiences. And what lessons have you been learning since that campaign?
Yeah, that's such a iconic Patagonia campaign that was an ad placement, I believe, in a newspaper. And then after that was adopted to other mediums. But it is a campaign that my team and I look back for inspiration often. I think what made that campaign impactful or why it resonated with people is in a world that's telling you to consume more or that you'd be happier if you get something new. We were giving people an alternative, right? Don't buy our jacket. You don't need something new. Instead, think about what you have and what you can repair. And to not feed into the extractive kind of capitalism that's influencing you to consume more. And I think that's why this particular ad had traction. And I think that's the reason why it resonated with so many.
Absolutely. And it is one of those campaigns that I feel we should all be aware of. And interestingly, this ad was actually run in the New York Times on Black Friday in 2011. So it is a while back. 14 years later, we're still talking about the campaign. The fact that you, as a company, were able to address the issue of consumerism and talk about your products and Patagonia clothing, but also talk about thinking twice before buying and then including that whole repair element of it has been fantastic. I know you also, as a company, help customers repair their Patagonia gear. You pledge to fix what's broken. So there is a lot of really interesting and inspiring components there. I wonder what you think about the current digital landscape. And when we look at feeds and social media content, we see a space saturated with polished visuals. Everything looks pretty perfect. And then we look at Patagonia's channels and we see a lot of authenticity. We see a lot of collaboration. And then you, as a social media team, have the opportunity to share all sorts of content. Talk to me a little bit about the process of how you decide when to present something raw or imperfect to maintain authenticity, and when you decide to maybe polish it up a little bit more or tell it in a different way.
Yeah, this one's thanks for this. I think this is ultimately one of the goals that Patagonia as an experiment tries to balance out. I think ultimately we don't shy away from letting people know that we're a work in progress, that there's a lot that we would love to do, but there's also a lot left to do. And I think that oftentimes we love to update our audience, social media, and where our progress is. I think one of the PFAS, we recently created a new way to waterproof jackets that doesn't use intentional forever chemicals. And I think that we were very intentional about that process, right? Like we gave people a behind the scenes look at what that collaboration with Cortex looked like and what were some of our downfalls, and also the fact that it took us a very long time to create that particular product or formula in a space where we could have presented that more polished and celebrated ourselves for the work that we did. We decided to give people behind the scenes. Hey, this took a long time. We wish it didn't. We understand the importance of it, but here it is now. I hope that you find good use of it, and I hope that you continue to keep us accountable for the products that we put out there.
Thank you for sharing. So, I am loving this conversation for a number of reasons, but mainly the fact that you are aligning with your brand purpose and you're sticking to that mission statement. But obviously, that doesn't come without online backlash. And as a former community manager who has dealt with quite a bit of negativity and social media backlash online, I would really love for our listeners to learn a little bit about how you deal with that process. How do you cultivate healthy dialogue and conversations among social media users while also navigating polarization online and any sort of negative comments that may come in?
I'm sure I'm not the only person working in social media that has this dilemma in their work, right? Ultimately, you think about people leaving comments and you're wondering, do people really care, or are they just looking for an outlet for their frustrations or emotions? One thing that we can do is, and I'll be honest with you, I read most of the comments that we get. I get notifications every time a comment is left. So I am pretty in the weeds of everything that's being posted or commented on in our channels. And I will say this, that when someone comes to us with a legitimate criticism or a legitimate concern, we try to give them either the answers or the resources to make their own decision. We are not here to convince people that we're doing things the right way or that we are the only way to do things, but we want to give people that information and transparency so that they can make an informed decision for themselves.
And that's a very healthy way of looking at it. And I'm sure it's not easy, especially with some of the examples you mentioned earlier. Taking political stances comes with undoubted backlash. So, when audiences challenge your positions, you referred to it a little bit. How do you handle that? You engage, educate, or do you also let your community respond organically? Have you seen instances where your community jumps in and continues that conversation?
Yeah, I think that Patagonia has definitely done a great job of cultivating a community that's values aligned, right? A lot of people follow Patagonia because they're also interested in potentially making this world a better place, I would say. And that's simplified, but ultimately, we have sometimes followers who would jump in and they will give their own 2 cents. And oftentimes they're saying the same thing that we would say. So there's no need for us to continue to say the same thing. We'll allow our audience to educate and inform each other. But when it comes directly to things that only we would know internally, like internal workings around like how are we ensuring that this particular issue is addressed, then we're not shy from engaging in conversation and kind of helping, again, give people that information they need in order for them to make the best decision for themselves.
That's wonderful. I know, speaking from experience, also having that community that is, like you said, you let them engage with each other, educate each other. It's not coming from the brand. So there's ultimately a very high level of credibility. It was always, as a community manager, for me, very reassuring when I saw people jumping to our rescue and saying, okay, you've got this all wrong. Let's take a look at this topic and distill it. So it takes the pressure off a little bit as well. I want to see if for you personally, if there's been a moment or something, a story that was highlighted by the community that reminds you on a daily basis why this work matters.
Yes, I'll start from the beginning and why I came to Patagonia. Patagonia put out films and they do social cuts and help highlight the issue, the social channels. Patagonia put out a film, this is a while back, called District 15. And District 15 was about a community in South LA, in Wilmington, that was dealing with issues of air quality, particularly because there was some oil drilling, I believe, in the area. And it was close to homes, it was close to schools, it was close to parks. And I think what made it so unique is that the stories that they were telling were people that look like me. I think I oftentimes, or if I'm being honest, was the first time that I saw a brand kind of highlight the stories of someone who mirrors very similar issues that are impacting my community. So I live in another part of Los Angeles in the valley, particularly in Pacoima, that also deals with a lot of air quality issues. And I think that particular story really resonated because it was real people, real issues, and getting at the core of the issue. There was no going around on what the problem was. It was facing it head on, and I thought it was really honest. And I think they did a really good job of highlighting the individuals that were being impacted in a way that respected their humanity, but also gave them a platform to tell their story and ultimately make a change in their community.
That's beautiful. I want to go back to something you said just now about getting to the core of the issue, because this is so key in the work that we do in environmental protection and sustainability in general. We're trying to address the issue and the root cause of the problems rather than putting on a band-aid. And this is a very key principle that guides everything we do in the sustainability space. And one of those things that we as storytellers and marketing professionals need to be aware of, because we want to tell those stories in the most correct way. A lot of times when we talk about the common corporate metrics and we talk about social media, we look at metrics like reach and engagement. But for anyone who's been listening carefully, I'm sure you've heard another theme pop up. So, Felipe, what KPIs or key performance indicators actually define success for your social media team?
And if there's other social media people who are tuning in, your head is spinning right now. I think ultimately I can give you the marketing answer, which is we really look at engagement, we look at impressions, and we also look at link clicks. But one of the metrics that's maybe not so easy to quantify is how are people receiving this and is it really making a change in their lives? And oftentimes we see that through the sentiment in the comments, right? Are people resonating, having a positive sentiment, or are they having productive conversations? Or are they sending us a direct message saying how much they either loved or how seen they felt. And I think those are things that maybe are not the traditional way that we quantify the performance of our content, but I think it's as equally important as like vanity metrics.
Absolutely. I appreciate you bringing up vanity metrics, the superficial metrics that don't say much about the actual performance of a social media post. And I love the fact that you bring up sentiment and sentiment analysis, the social listening and monitoring piece is so important. I'm very excited to have this conversation now because I know you have an exciting update you wanted to share today on the podcast. Patagonia is releasing its first work in progress report. So, congratulations on that. Can you tell us a bit more about that and how your social media team uses insights from reports like this one to shape content and messaging or even community engagement throughout the year?
Yeah, actually, this is one of the work that I'm really excited on. Like you mentioned, Patagonia is putting out its first ever work in progress report. So, this is where we'll give people insights into where we're at as a business across our different departments, right? So, not just from where we're at headquarters in Ventura, but also like where our regions are at, both in the product, the manufacturing, the environmental work that we're doing, the donations that we've given. So this is pretty much Patagonia stripping the veil and giving you insights into where we're at as a business. I think, and I will give you a little bit of a preview here, but the way that we're rolling out this campaign on social, I think we're taking it a little bit lighter. I think we're gonna use some humor to get the messaging across, and hopefully it lands well. Feel free to go to patagonia.com and you can read the full report. This report, I think it's really big for the business. And when the marketing team was tasked to market this particular report, we're really happy with the results and the approach that we've taken.
Yes, and I feel very lucky in the Patagonia Insider because the pre-announcement for this report went out just 3 hours ago, and I'm reading from the social media post that went out, which is a quote from your founder that says, "For all the work we've done on our products and in our supply chain, and all the money we've given away to environmental nonprofits, it's still not enough." It just captures the essence so beautifully. I also look at other companies who've started to put out impact reports. I know you're calling it a different type of report, but I know from experience that the impact reports also do a similar thing where they're highlighting the impact across all the different departments and mainly social enterprises and also nonprofits follow that model. So that's fantastic. A few things that I want to ask you for folks who are listening and are doing this work day in and day out with all the new platforms that come out and all the different channels that are at our disposal. How do you, as a brand, make sure you tailor your voice and content across platforms? So, for example, you have an Instagram versus a LinkedIn versus a TikTok. Which channels are you on most frequently, and how do you adjust voice and content accordingly?
I love this question because I feel like each channel has its unique lingo and jargon and ways that they like to interact and connect with each other. So I think in many ways we don't, right? Like we have one brand voice and we stay consistent across platforms, but once in a while we do deviate from that traditional voice and kind of try to meet people where they're at. Is it that we strip down a little bit and are more relaxed or even perhaps more funny on different platforms such as TikTok, where the community there is more lighthearted and playful, or a platform like LinkedIn where we're more business and we're talking B2B and trying to influence other businesses to follow suit, perhaps to implement some of the things we've worked on that work, right? Help move the needle on some of the issues that we're working on. So that's how we approach it, right? Like we look at what the different jargon and lingos are on these different platforms, and when it makes sense, we're playful and we tailor. But ultimately, our voice remains the same across all channels.
It's really refreshing to see that you have the ability to stick to the brand voice and not chase, like you said, the vanity metrics and some of the things that in this very crowded, noisy space we were looking at. Really, the goal of the podcast has really been to look at how you can use social media for social impact. And that means breaking the norm and reimagining the way social media is leveraged. Very thrilled we're having this conversation. And like you said, there isn't one way of doing things. And if there are multiple ways, that's something you're clearly sharing with us today. So I appreciate that. And I want to really conclude this conversation with you by asking for your advice. So many brands look to Patagonia as a model for purpose driven marketing. What is one piece of advice you share with them about using social media to make a real impact?
That's such a big question because I feel like not one piece of advice fits all. I think if I were to strip it down to its core, I would just say be yourself. I think that there's a lot of different brands out there who are trying to perhaps chase a trend or be more trendy. I would say in a world that's doing that, really focus on what your goal is and how you as an individual, as a brand, organization can get that across in a way that feels authentic to you. I think people really value authenticity. I think people in many ways crave when organizations or brands are being honest and transparent. And I think if you keep that lens, not everything is going to be viral, and that's okay. I think the most important thing you should look at is how this particular strategy in your business helps with the other things that are going on across your organization.
That's really powerful. And I agree with you. Thank you for sharing that. Felipe, is there anything I didn't ask about or didn't touch on that you would like to share with our listeners today?
If you're out there and you're looking to get into social media, or if you're already working on social media, I would just like to say give yourself some grace. I know that there is an expectation for everything to perform really well and to hit those vanity metrics. It's okay if you don't always hit those marks. As long as you're staying true to your brand voice and you're staying true to your mission statement, everything else doesn't quite matter.
I love it. Not only do you bring a lot of insights about the social media strategy to the table, but also having met you in person, you bring such a calming and graceful presence. So I hope that our listeners also sense that through the mic because you are making me feel like it is okay not to be on TikTok and get a million views on the content and just having that authenticity and humanity. So I really want to thank you so much for joining me and giving us an authentic look into how Patagonia brings its mission to life on social.
So thank you for having me, Nisha.
Absolutely. And to our listeners, thanks for tuning in. If you feel inspired, take a moment to reflect on what your brand or organization stands for and how you can use your digital voice. You can follow Patagonia's work on all major platforms and, of course, link to the show notes to see their newest reports and other amazing initiatives they're working on. Make sure you like, follow, subscribe, and explore episodes of the podcast. Until next time, keep leading with purpose, curiosity, and impact.